So I got a new book I'm kind of excited about. It's called Otherwise Known as Possum by Maria D. Lasso. I'm not sure how to say it. Lasso. I'm going to read you the first chapter. Chapter 1, page 1. Crows all flappy. Around here, when folks die, people cook. Fried chicken, corn chowder, sweet potato pie. Trouble is, then they put on their Sunday clothes and take that food to the home of the dead person. Of course, the dead person can't say boo, much less eat. The family of the dead person can't talk nor eat neither. How could they, on account of all the sorrow storming inside that drowns out every noise? Plus, the big rock stuck in their throats, the one that keeps down the howling, but that's hard to get food or words past. So what happens is the people in their Sunday clothes stand around visiting with other people in their Sunday clothes, all of them eating that food they brought. Dredged catfish, potato soup, ambrosia. They talk about things like Mr. President Hoover and the sad state of the country, and will that Mr. Roosevelt set things right? Everyone talks about the election coming and the drought going and where there might be work. Everyone talks about things that won't matter to the dead person, things that shouldn't matter to the dead person's family. Eventually, the people in their Sunday clothes get tired of standing in their Sunday shoes, so they leave. Every one of them hopes at least this many people will do the same when he passes. With the last of the Sunday clothes people gone, the house hushes past silence. The dead person is still dead, and the people left behind have to find the way and the will to crush the quiet before it crushes them. That's why I was sitting under Mama's tree, shooting windfall pecans at the crows with my flip. I knew Mama, most of all, would expect me to smarten back to usual in no unhurried way, even if the crack in my heart would never heal. As a result, I do not shoot at birds, but crows are a trouble, a nuisance that will eat crops and gardens. I gotta start over. I messed that up. Let's go back a little bit. It's not as a result. As a rule, I do not shoot at birds, but crows are trouble, a nuisance that will eat crops and gardens. Crows don't even sing for supper. I put another pecan into the band, pulled tight, and aimed, squinting right between the Y and the one tick to the left. Traveler wuffled. I could see the crow's beaks move, but they sounded like old biddies minding someone else's business. Trav snorted, lifted his head, and gave a grinding sound from his deepest parts. He stood rigid, peered over my shoulder, and then pulled on my coveralls. The town ladies were back. It was them Traveler had heard. They'd swooped onto the porch, all black wings and beady eyes like giant crows, beaks fixing to stick into our business. I considered taking a shot. After all, a crow's a crow, and I have dead keen aim, on account of I am naturally gifted for such things. Plus, I have the finest flip a person can have, made by my daddy, who is a wonder with all kinds of wood. He's good at everything he does, he just doesn't do everything. Instead, I pushed my glumpy pigtails out of my eyes and followed Traveler to see what had been in the town lady's claws. Our noses told us covered dish, smelled like creamed corn and onions. Mama and baby died in June, and it seemed like every week in the 2 months since, everyone who came calling brought black-eyed peas or paloo or crawdad fritters. Only the more people who came by, the lonelier I felt. Used to be, I was never lonely. Even when I wasn't with my best dog friend or my best person friend, my days were filled with the music of creek splashing and idea hatching and life living. But it got quiet when we lost Mama. She was the music Daddy and I danced to. Now birds sang, hens still cackled their fool heads off each day, as if nobody ever laid an egg before. Yet always I seemed to be waiting for laughter, or for crying or calling. Everything felt cottony at times. At times I feared breaking apart from aloneness, but other times I needed to get alone quick for fear of bursting. In all that haze, there were only 3 things I could be certain of. 1, Trav is the best dog ever. 2, I can count on my best human friend, Tully, till kingdom come comes. 3, Daddy needs me to keep us keeping on. Mama would be counting on me from heaven to keep any more change from ripping apart what's left of our lives. I peeked in the front window. The curtains were drawn, so I couldn't see in, but I could picture those pink powdered crows perched all around Mama's front room, with the creek mud walls and hand-sewn pillows in the company chair. I could hear them well enough to thank you kindly, chattering things like, "Surely the girl," or "For Liz Betty's sake," and "Neighbors in your time of need." They were all fired fixed on telling Daddy what to do. And not just what to do, but what to do with me. "Mr. Porter, that child needs proper schooling." Talking like I wasn't there. Never mind that I wasn't. "Why, we have this lovely young teach—" Whose voice was that? I strained to hear. "I'd say she's young. I wonder why she didn't marry but left I'd say she's young. I wonder why she didn't marry but left Kithenkin to come here. One of those Roosevelt Reds, I imagine." "Ladies, please," came a new voice, stronger and louder, Miss Nagy's. "We agreed to present a united front for Mr. Porter. The fact is, a young girl left without a mother, particularly in these, rustic circumstances, why, she's going to need someone to see a proper education." Proper education. I took their squawking to mean schooling, and that steamed me. It really did. I am past 11 and a half, working on 12, and never been to school on account of I know everything my mama taught me, and she knew more than anybody. In the pause that followed, I pictured the ladies rearranging skirts and strategies. I figured the biddies were, as usual, ruffling with the air with their words. Daddy had come to say a word, but of course he had no more mind to send me to school than he'd ever had. And why wouldn't he? Or why would he? Mama was clear on the subject. She said no one comes from every kind of person and place, and she believed in learning over schooling. To me, who's been learning up and down the holler my whole life, school'd be as wasteful as a bath on a Wednesday. Besides, Daddy and I had an understanding. No more change. I wanted things like when they'd been perfect. I wanted to hear Daddy's hammer out back so I could picture Mama taking him cool spring water, her about to walk back into the kitchen where the smell and sound of her was more than a soft pinching at my heart. But he was all but gone. That Daddy who'd pick up Mama and spin her for no reason beyond air as for breathing. A shadow of a stranger who looked like him had been put in his place. He'd been spending more time than ever in his shop, and though woodworking is his language, I wasn't sure what he was trying to say, and I sure wasn't going to figure it out by spending all day in some schoolhouse. But life lately seemed frailer than morning webs, and everything seemed sideways. Maybe this new thinking Daddy would be flapped by those old crows into turning against Mama and toward town ladies and teachers and all manner of trouble with a capital T. I couldn't sit around waiting to see. I had to get the old biddies to leave before they turned Daddy's head. It was high time they got a taste of their own medicine. Tea as sweet as those salted old biddies. I sprinted down to the creek to pull 2 cool jars of pale amber tea from the creek cooler. I ran one across each cheek and then carried them around back to the kitchen door. My eyes lit on Mama's favorite apron still hanging from a wooden peg. From the parlor, Daddy's voice floated in, the same voice he used to reason with Grand Nan when she would not be reasoned with. "Norlie took schoolin' serious," I heard him say, "and she had her own ideas about it, that is for sure." I pulled down jars and glasses that hadn't been used since the funeral and set one on each flower of Mama's painted Chinese tray like they were blooms of glass. Then I poured cool tea into each like I was a Robin Hood bee returning nectar to each blossom. Daddy continued, "Point is, ladies, meaning no disrespect, but by my mind, the decision's made, and not like to be altered by you. And it has nothing to do with her learning so far. Possum does sums in her head faster than me. You all too, probably. She read to me and Nora Lee by the time she was 4. Truth. We only had a Bible, catalogs, and tired magazines from Newcomb's, the general store on the country road side of town, but I read it all. That was a big part of Mama's idea about schooling versus learning. Mama explained more than once, in a school, you learn everything between four walls. I want you to learn the world. Often, I'd read to Mama and Daddy by kerosene lamp while they snuggled up on the porch, her back fitting into his chest, his arms around her waist. Of course, we made up lots of stories too. Through stories and pictures, we saw worlds on worlds. With the contents of the second jar poured in each container on the tray held about 3 fingers worth of 2-day tea, which is made by adding boiling water to used leaves and setting the jars in the sun. 2-day tea is just right for pulling the steam out of you after a long walk or a fast run. From the second shelf by the stove, I took down the pink glass sugar bowl. Its handle stuck out like Connie Harris's ears. I used both hands like Mama showed me and took it by the bowl. I held it up to the window and marveled, like I always did, at the way the light goes through the bowl's feet and makes tiny rainbows on the walls. I added to the tray a stack of napkins hemmed by Grand Nam and ironed into the fierce fourths by Mama. Finally, I took down the tin shaker that sat next to the sugar bowl, listening for the rustle of the rice grains. Daddy said, "I'm not sure now's the right," but he cut off when I backed into the room with the tray of refreshment. The ladies looked real surprised. Daddy even more. I managed not to look at him while I set the heavy tray on Mama's good library table and offered around tea, each glass delivered with a napkin to catch its damp ring of sweat. "Why, thank you, dear," said one town lady. "Aren't you thoughtful?" chimed another. I studied Mama's rug, hoping to seem ladylike, but church truth, it was so I wouldn't bust a gut. Long as Mr. President Hoover had us Americans hooverizing for the good of the country, wouldn't I be downright unpatriotic to waste good sugar on the likes of those old crows? The oldest town lady, Miss Nagy, raised her glass first. She was sitting on the davenport. Well, really, it's a daybed with pillows, so she did not have the angle to notice that I had neglected to serve Daddy. I snuck a look around one pigtail at him. His eyebrows were shot to the top of his head, asking me something. Miss Nagy swallowed, and her puckered face got puckerier. Her eyes squinted, then opened big, crossed. Tea blew out of her mouth and nose. The crows flapped in consternation and dismay, gagging, coughing, or sputtering. Daddy, the only one looking my way, pressed his lips thin, but I thought I saw laughing eyes. "Possum," he said in a warning voice. Miss Nagy looked at me over her spectacles, a fierce stare. "That tea was full of salt, young lady. Do you have something to say?" Her eyes looked like they alone could brand my hide. Yet I knew she believed that she believed in forgiveness. I stared right at her. I want to apologize for putting salt in the tea." It was my humble voice. The murmuring resumed, and Miss Nagy nodded once, almost like she believed me. It's just. I pushed my bottom lip out a bit. Daddy slumped like the air was punched from his lungs. "Possum, what's wrong, sweetie?" I looked away quick. "It's just someone must have moved the. I know Mama kept the sugar in the pink, but salt, Not a single lie. I was backing through the room as I talked, looking with my humble face into the craggy faces of each biddy as I went. Everyone looked at me like I was the baby lamb instead of the coyote, except for Miss Pickerel, who was making faces into her serviette. I figured she must still be trying to rid the salt from her mouth, as she was not likely on purpose making such faces at Miss Nagy's back. "Well," Miss Nagy began. Next I covered my face with my hands till I felt the weather in the room change. "Thank you for understanding," I said as I neared the doorway that would be my escape. "Now I reckon I ought to see to those delicious smelling dishes you all so thoughtfully brought. Won't you excuse me, please?" From the kitchen I heard a bit more squawking and murmuring. "It's just this kind of behavior." That sounded like Miss Nagy, long past hopping mad and on toward leaping. I pictured her standing, curved like a question mark so her spectacles teetered on the wart with one hair in it. "Now, Miss Nagy, the poor creature's just—" Then Daddy's voice came through like preachers on Sunday. "That child is a creature, ladies, a creature of God, perfect in his sight, nor do I appreciate the suggestion that the upbreeding Norley and I have provided has failed her." I felt my chest puff for making Daddy proud, yet I was spitting mad at them for suggesting Mama didn't teach me right. Oh, now we didn't. That I knew was Miss Pickrell's quiet, Cairo syrup voice. She was a young widow, her face less crackly than the others. As their discussion went on, I realized my trick hadn't done what I needed doing. Just like crows, they'd flapped and squawked and ended up landing right where they'd been. I needed to shoo 'em away before they mentioned any more of that school nonsense. Then something familiar caught my eyes in a new way. Daddy shaved in the kitchen, where the window had the best morning light. His strop and mirror hung on a post by the sink, cup and brush on the ledge. They gave me an idea. I passed the brush across my lip and cheeks. I loved the feel of the soft bristles and the soap smell. A couple drops of water in the cup, and I worked up a right good lather. Then I opened the screen door to Trav, who'd been whimpering outside, for the piece of bacon I slipped him. I was paid in kissy slobbers. Then I set to work, foaming up his jowls till he looked like Santa Paws. As I washed up, Traveler nosed around. I let him sniff another piece of bacon before I put it in my pocket and raced him into the hall. While keeping Trav back with one foot, I dragged my little stool in front of the swinging door. I knew Trav would get it open once he set his mind to it. Thanks to the bacon, his mind seemed set to it. I put my pocket against the crack and let Traveler sniff once more, for extra double sure good measure. Then I went back in to see the crows. Ladies, I said, walking slowly to the far end of the room. I cleared my throat. Daddy glared me a warning, which I conveniently did not see. He had his ways to punish without using a belt or a peach tree switch. Sometimes, when I had not been the best, he would refuse me a candy treat or a nighttime story, and that did hurt. He'd never given me a licking, but I figured that could change directly. Lucky for us, that look was as far as Daddy was able to get before a clatter pulled him to his feet. What in tarnate? Twitchy Miss Pickrell flapped like a jitterjack. Then Traveler was jumping at me for bacon, his foamy beard flying every which way, and chaos erupted. Aw, wouldn't you just figure Tully had to be away to miss the sight of this? I sorely wished he'd been witness, because he was not likely to believe the telling of it. The Crow ladies ran squawking out of our lives, which serves them right for what they tried to pull, disrespecting Mama and all the learning she'd given me. I knew Mama would be proud that I'd bested the old crows while also giving Daddy the chance to say that Mama's way was the right way. We had no need to change anything, especially what wasn't broke.